Mirroring someone is often a way to be comfortable with each other.
The high vibe path for her is that she has to come clean and admit everything that happened.
We all know how those negative thoughts can live and breed and grow.
That's like the blood you're trying to clean off of that. You know the bloodshed you caused.
In my day, I had to walk to school in the snow.
The real concept in the beginning is to give yourself permission to just flow with it.
When you experience something, a UFO creature, a cryptid, it is so bizarre and strange to you that it kind of does throw you out of whack a little bit.
Welcome to High Vibe Finds, the podcast. This is where I share my conscious take on pop culture and the human experience, plus a few intriguing stories that just might redefine your reality. My guest today is screenwriter, friend, and cream soda enthusiast, Eric Jeske. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I have 5 cosmic questions I ask all my guests at the top of the show. I'd love to hit you with those.
Oh, yes, please.
All right, so number 1, what is the most inspiring quote you've ever heard?
Right off the bat, these are going to be good questions, I can tell. Wow, I want to dig deep and give you something very meaningful.
I can give you one of mine if you want.
Yes, please. Yes, start me off. Get my brain going.
One of the quotes I always liked is a quote that really originates from Confucius, but I believe that Henry Ford kind of said it as well, which is whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. Yep.
And I just love the idea because it puts the onus on us to actually create the lives we want and to achieve the goals we want. And of course, there's challenges. It's not, nothing's easy, but it's just the concept that takes out the blame game. So you don't blame everybody else. You just say, what can I do better?
Yeah, no, I love that one. It's great that you started because it did all of a sudden get the juices flowing a little bit. So I think I have 2 that I just thought of when, that just popped in there. So one is, I think, Winston Churchill, which is, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
That's one I like a lot. And then another one is from a hero of mine, is Bruce Lee. And that's just be like water.
Man,
and that's just
good.
Be malleable, being able to adapt to your container or whatever position you're put in, and just being able to be flexible and ready.
Number 2, if you could go on an all expenses paid trip tomorrow or next week, would it be A, an outdoor adventure to hike or bike in stunning natural scenery, B, a cultural experience to see classic art and architecture, or C, a relaxing vacay to sunbathe on a beach?
Wow, let's put them all together into a giant, massive one. But if I had to pick one, I do like my relaxing, but I would go with B, the cultural. I like traveling, going to museums, eating different foods, soaking up different cultures. So that's where I'm happy, is going someplace like Venice, and somewhere that has ruins or some real history that you can really you can't experience through pictures or video. You have to be boots on the ground.
Very nice. Okay, question number 3. If you're super stressed, which action would you take? A, hit the gym hard. B, cuddle up with your cat. C, meditate. Or D, medicate.
Wow, again, that's all of those sound very appealing. But when you hit the cat, I have a little kitty cat. I'm a little cat daddy. I love her to pieces, and I don't think anything gives me such joy or love than this little critter. I do meditate though as well. So when things do get stressful, I do transcendental meditation. So I will meditate. The best is when the kitty jumps in the lap while you're meditating and you're getting purring vibrations while you're meditating as well. So that would be the twofer, would be the ultimate.
Number 4, which of the following phenomena is most likely real? UFOs, time travel, telekinesis, or Bigfoot?
Wow. That's a big one too. I am into the esoterica, and I'm into high-strangeness. So even though I'm into it, the belief is a strong word. So take time travel out of there. Bigfoot's interesting. I think I would go with UFOs over all the other ones. Although a lot of times I don't know if I see UFOs as nuts and bolts craft, is more of a maybe interdimensional or something of the subconscious.
Last question. What is your definition of consciousness?
Wow, we don't even, we just throw the hardballs here. That's a good question. I mean, it's awareness. Yeah, I don't know. That's very deep.
Somebody once said to me, it's kind of unknowable. It just has to be experienced.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Most of the stories that I'm going to share today are from Reddit. Am I the asshole? Am I overreacting? Plus a few bizarre ones. Now, the last story is our hot topic of the day. Hint, it has something to do with cryptids.
We're gonna go boom. We're gonna go.
Am I the asshole for telling a kid he's colorblind? This happened 20 years ago, and I still think about how I ruined a mother and child's day. I was working in a mini golf and arcade, handing out prizes and running birthday parties. This child, about 10 years old, comes up with his tickets. His mother is hovering over his shoulder, waiting to get out of there. He claims his prizes and has a few tickets left when his mom starts to get impatient. She tells him to pick 2 blue bracelets for his sister. He picks out 2 purple ones. She chides him and says, "Those are purple. Get 2 blue bracelets." He goes back into the bin and again picks out 2 purple ones. His mom again says, "I said, get 2 blue bracelets." So I said, "Hey, buddy, I got a couple of tests for you." I pulled out 5 bracelets, red and green, then asked him how many are red. He got the wrong answer. I then did this with 5 green and yellow bracelets. Again, wrong answer. So I did it again. I pulled out 5 identical blue bracelets and asked how many are blue. At this point, he was frustrated. Again, he got it wrong. I looked at his mom, and she was flabbergasted. She said, "Baby, they're all blue." Then I asked if the boy's father is colorblind. She said yes. At that point, she seemed really concerned and even embarrassed. She smiled politely, then tugged her son away. The kid was so sad and upset. I remember thinking, imagine being that kid's mom and not noticing. Imagine being that kid being told you're colorblind, and here's proof by a minimum wage stranger after a day of playing arcade games and eating cake. Am I the asshole?
Wow. I love that he's even thinking about this. I mean, I love him, and I don't love that he's thinking about this so many years afterwards. I love that he's trying to acknowledge what happened and just like review his personal interactions. All his intentions seemed very well-meaning. Like he wasn't there making fun of the kid or making fun of the mother for not knowing. He saw something and he was trying to help the kid understand, or obviously he had some kind of knowledge of it, or maybe even some personal interactions with color blindness. So the fact that he could spot it and then help out. I mean, I have a feeling that they left and maybe did tests, or maybe said, hey, dad's colorblind, maybe we should see where you're at. Maybe that led to the child getting corrective. I mean, not corrective, any kind of like surgery or anything, but I know they, started making glasses, and even like on TVs, or if you play games, there are colorblind settings that you can put so it can look more realistic to you or better. So, I mean, for me, I don't think so at all. I think he gave some knowledge, or at least some interaction for them to take back and then take it from there.
I don't think he was purposely trying to upset the kid. Maybe he could have shown a little more awareness of the situation, because when you suspect a kid is struggling with something, the best move is quiet confirmation, not public testing.
Mm-hmm.
And the delivery matters, because a child doesn't experience a lesson the way an adult does. Sometimes they experience a glaring spotlight on them, and that can be very uncomfortable. But I really don't think that overall what the end result was bad. In fact, I think getting that insight is going to help him moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a comment. I'll read you one of these comments that I thought was interesting. Someone said, NTA, not the asshole. I bet that kid remembers that day clearly as a formative moment when he started to realize that he actually experiences the world differently and wasn't just stupid like perhaps his mom's commentary made him feel. You did him a big favor, even if it was uncomfortable in the moment. But the next comment someone wrote was, I didn't realize my daughter was left-handed until a lefty friend pointed it out after seeing a picture of her coloring. I also didn't realize she needed special scissors until the same friend told me that. Then it all made sense why she couldn't cut well. She was only 4, so it wasn't a big deal, but as soon as she got lefty scissors, she was able to cut paper easily. Even if this lady's father was colorblind, she might not have realized her kid was for years. So in the end, OP bringing it to her attention was a good thing. I can get on board with that, right?
Same. And man, I really feel the lefty. I'm a fellow lefty myself. And having
Wow.
grown up smearing ink when you write because you're writing over and across your writing instead of like pulling it across like a righty. The scissors is a big thing. You just learn to cut bad with your right hand or very bad with your left hand. You don't even realize that they even make left-handed scissors. I got a pair of left-handed scissors. I don't even use them because I grew up everything using right hand. So I definitely feel that poster's point about the left-handedness and just how you see the world differently, and when you're made aware that not everybody experiences everything the way you do. I think that's a very evolved way of starting to look at the world.
What is the percentage of left-handers in the world? Is it like 10 or 20, or is it much bigger than that?
When you said 10%, I mean, I felt like that's probably right too, but I don't know. It might be more. I never really looked in to see how many. But I'll tell you this, when you see a left-handed person on film or TV, or you see somebody write, like, I don't know, I automatically pick it up as, I just see it.
I do too, because my dad is left-handed. So I always notice he wrote that way. When he started playing golf, same thing as you. When you're a kid, they're like, do it right-handed. And so he learned it right-handed. And then when he got older, he had a shoulder issue. So then he had to switch hands. And he's like, wow, I should have just started this way. This is my natural swing. So yeah, I mean, the other thing I was going to say is when we're young and someone tells us that we're different, even if it's just in a small way, that could be the seed of self-doubt and future anxiety. But regarding OP, this story it's really about shame and how to transmute it, because I think what's haunting him isn't the fact that he made the kid aware of his colorblindness, it's the feeling that he may have unintentionally embarrassed a child and made his mother feel blindsided by it, which actually means, going back to what you said earlier, that OP has a conscience. So kudos on him. Yeah, and instead of replaying the moment as like, I ruined this kid's day, he should reframe it as, I learned how powerful my words can be. None of us can change the past, but we can get redemption from our past mistakes by just maturing into someone who's just a little more aware and compassionate. And I do think he was compassionate. I think in his mind, hey, he's just working at a fair. He's starting to notice a pattern. And I think he's just like, hey, let's do a little test. We're young. We're going to make it into a game. And I think that wasn't a bad way to do it, actually.
Yeah, no, well said. The fact that he's still dwelling on it, yes, I think I agree with you. He is seeing it as, he's replaying it as something that, yes, could have negatively affected somebody else. And I think that's very big of him. And even just asking, trying to start a dialogue on it to try and help him through it is what it sounds like he's trying to do to help himself as well.
I, 27 male, just found out that my wife, 26 female, went home with another man from the bar on Saturday. We have 2 kids, ages 2 and 3. She doesn't know I know. Is there any way we can come back from this? My wife of 7 years had an affair Saturday night. She said she was going to the bar with her dad and wound up sleeping with an ex-boyfriend. I was home with our 2 young daughters, oblivious to what had happened, until one of her friends broke the news. The best part of it is that I found out about it while on the way to meet my wife for the very rare child-free dinner. And because I was afraid of making a mistake out of emotion, I had to sit across from her with this new knowledge churning in my stomach while she talked about our plans to start trying to have baby number 3. How much she's enjoyed staying home raising our kids and how much she's appreciated everything I do to allow her to stay home and focus on being a mother. I wanted to vomit. I have tried my best to not let on that I know. But she was extremely lovey-dovey tonight, and she is usually very disconnected with me and the kids when she is home. Her friend made it clear that my wife is adamant she's taking this secret to her grave, and that the sex was unprotected. Why did I say yes to the details? And that she's continued talking to this guy this week. The friend also said she's fairly confident it was a one-off mistake, but that she doesn't seem to understand the gravity of what she has done to our family. I am heartbroken for my children who will forever have their lives altered because of their mother's decision. It's burning a hole inside of me. I'm lying on the couch at 2 a.m. shaking, still unable to process it. and terrified of what the next few days will bring. When I found out a handful of hours ago and realized there was no room for this to be a misunderstanding, I immediately thought divorce was the only path forward. I can't imagine I'll ever trust her again. On the other hand, I do love her. I feel bad for her in all of this somehow because she comes from a family where things like this happen. Her mom abandoned her when she was a kid, and she has no reliable family. I can't see how she could possibly land on her own feet, and I don't want my babies to be put in bad circumstances because of her lack of options. The family she does have is where I'd assumed she'd go, but they are all drunks and drug users. How do I move forward? I will survive whatever path I take, but what is the best path for me and my little girls?
That one's hard. That one's rough. I like he said that he'll survive whichever path he takes. You know, that is a path that he's going to have to decide. You know, first of all, I feel in relationships, you know, communication is the key. So this is something that's underneath, bubbling in the surface. It needs to come out. It needs to be talked about, and then only then can they move forward. I would hope that this man would speak to his wife and they could speak openly and honestly, starting to worry about what might happen to her after. That's where, I mean, I don't know if that's his job anymore. I mean, if they were going to get a divorce or separate or something like that. After that, I don't know how much responsibility you have for your partner after the partnership is dissolved. And man, does it suck and to be betrayed and to have your trust broken like that. I mean, can that be repaired? Can it? I mean, I don't know how much love is there. You know, I feel for him, but I think it's just something that they have to discuss, and you know, maybe it's counseling or maybe there's other steps. You have to work together as a team. One person can't decide for two, I don't think.
I agree. First of all, his heartbreak is completely valid here. He should definitely not decide his whole future while he's in this state of shock. Ever since he found out about it, he said his body's been in survival mode. It's like that's when everything feels urgent, extreme, irreversible. Shock is definitely not the place that you should be in when you make a big life decision. So for at least the next few days, he should focus on getting good sleep, hydrating. Everyone forgets about that. I drink nonstop water. Mm-hmm. And you maybe should write down what he knows, what he feels, and what he needs so he doesn't spiral. And if he can, I agree with you, tell a trusted friend or a therapist so that he's not alone in all this. You know, on his end, he can have compassion for her story, but it doesn't mean that he should accept her betrayal.
It doesn't excuse it now.
Yeah, I mean, he can try to understand her wounds because obviously he does already know that she's been wounded, but he could still hold her accountable. Mm-hmm. I mean, I always feel like, what message does it send? Even though the kids are really young, they're really only, 2 and 3. At some point, if this is the pattern they set, they're going to witness the way she continues to push that envelope, and he might continue to accept it. And that's a real bad example for kids. You know, they would want to see some sort of structure, maybe. I think we all want structure and consequences. That's why there's laws. We want to see, if you do this, there is a repercussion, I think.
When people stay together for the kids or whatnot, I think you said it, you know, I think you were right on with, if there's resentment, if there's hate, if there's bad vibes between them, the kids will pick up on that. And then what good does that do anybody? So, you know, the thing about talking to a friend though, because when you said that, I thought, you know, oh yeah, it would be nice to talk to a trusted friend as well. But if you have really good friends, they're probably in your corner and on your side and totally going to be for you. So
that's a good point.
I like the cool down period too. Lots of times you do need to cool down, but also we all know how those negative thoughts can live and breed and grow. And so I like the idea of a therapist, of just talking to anybody. Talking to a friend, I mean, is great on its own. Just you got to talk and get your thoughts out.
You know, I will say that in a past relationship, when it all sort of came to my attention, nothing cheating related, but just maybe we had a conversation, me and my then girlfriend, and it just came to my attention, and I started thinking, I didn't even look at it this way. And then I actually remember going out to coffee with 2 friends, and I usually keep my relationship private. I'm just not going to go say negative things because I would just deal with it. But in that case, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, now I really do have to think this isn't an animosity. It's just compatibility. So let me bring this up and get some feedback. So I brought it up to those two friends, and they both were very clear, like, because, we can all be good mirrors for each other. And so they're just like, well, if this is how you feel, you're not going to, change that. And she's not going to change that. And they just made it help me really clarify that the decision was at that point, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
So that's what the friends can do. But I agree with you. They're going to take your side, and that's not going to be something that is fair.
Right. They might just start bagging on her, and then that's not helpful either. I mean, but I think I would just come back to, and for me, this is any relationship you have, like, there's no guarantee that the love will last forever.
Yeah.
And the
true.
love is there when the love's there. And if the love's not there anymore, again, like staying in something, hoping that it might, it might respark too. I mean, it's all how much you're willing to keep putting into it.
The high vibe path for her is that she has to come clean and admit everything that happened. There can't be anything still going on with this ex-boyfriend. Also, there's a couple of things you have to talk about, like STD testing, if it was
Definitely.
unprotected sex.
Mhm.
Therapy is another avenue. And the key is that his wife has to confront whatever her inner demons are and figure out like why she did this. Obviously, something's lacking in their marriage. And by the way, if it's not that, then there's just something in her that feels like she can just maybe do this and get away with it. Although, like she did say, she wants to take the secret to her grave. But then why would she still be talking to the guy, right? You can love somebody, but still choose yourself. OP needs to watch out for ways that she might try and win him over, like love bombing, trying to be completely appreciative of him. That's how people try and salvage things like this. And she may be sincere, but he's just got to be aware that it also could be her best effort to just keep things together and not really suffer any consequences. I really think in this case, the ultimate high vibe point is that he has to choose himself first here. He can't just say what's best for the family. I don't really believe that when people are out of sync and out of harmony, but yet they stay together anyway, I don't think that really benefits the kids because they grow up and they see disingenuous like handling of each other. And, the people that I know who had parents who were divorced, that was a lot of what it was. I actually have a friend who once watched their parents be so passive aggressive to each other for like months and months and months. And eventually she just like screamed at them, just get a divorce already.
Right. Yeah. They knew. The kids knew.
Yeah.
It was like, if they're old enough to know, I mean, nobody wants their folks to split, but if you're seeing, like you said, passive aggressiveness, if you're seeing just like nastiness, it's not benefiting anyone. But in a marriage with the family, yeah, that's rough. I would hope that they would start talking about it and not hold secrets, especially, we all have our little secrets and that, but secrets in your relationship, secrets of that type, it's just going to be a toxic situation. So
I have two quick comments, really short ones that are poignant. First one is you need to verify this. Is what her friend said rock solid? Is the friend trustworthy? And then he also says, talk to a lawyer before planning next steps. You need professional legal advice. I think that's interesting, the first part of that specifically, because there's a possibility that this may be exaggerated in some way. I don't think so, because but we do have to keep in mind that sometimes friends have bad intentions and who knows. Now, the next one, which I think is really interesting, I'd love to get your thought on this. They said, hey, this is the year 2026. Ask to see your wife's phone and ask to read her texts. Do you think that's an invasion of privacy? Or do you think that like in a marriage, maybe there's some reason that's valid to do that?
I think the invasion of privacy is doing it without them knowing. But I think asking to see and then watching the reaction of whether they want you to see what's on their phone or not. I mean, like I said, we all have our we all have little secrets and things we have, but whether the friend was correct or not, he needs to ask his wife, confront her, and or just, like you said, verify whether this information is true. Now, if she denies or lies or says something else, I mean, he has to either take that and go with that, or or explore further, like you said, maybe check a phone or an email, or if they don't want you to look around, then I'm not saying that's the damning evidence, but it doesn't look good.
My narcissistic mother hates that I can work remotely for my job. We used to do 5 days a week in the office, but after the pandemic, we started to work remotely 90% of the time. I do maybe a day or two a week in the office. Some weeks, none at all, depending on who shows up. I like it because I have no commute. I can wake up slightly later and just get the stuff done without distractions. I work in finance and can literally just go into my zone. I am way more productive than when I'm in the office. My partner also works in a similar way, and she goes in 1 or 2 days a week. Everybody agrees it's brilliant. Aside from one person, of course, my narcissistic mother. Anytime I see her, the only thing she asks is, "Did you go to the office this week?" And when I say no, she immediately has a hissy fit like a petulant child. "OMG, I can't believe it. What a cop-out. You are all so lazy. How is this allowed?" For context, I am a fully grown man. I don't need to answer to anyone aside from my partner. It is also none of my mom's business what work arrangements I have. She likes to think she can force me to do stuff, even now. I believe she treats me like a teenager because it's the last time she had complete control over me. All other aspects of control vanished entirely when I moved away and got serious with my partner. So, why is working from home such a divisive thing for narcissists?
In my day, I had to walk to school in the snow. I think I think we're hitting on a lot of, just a lot of old school way of thinking on this one. And you said it was his mother-in-law or his mother?
No, his actual mom.
His actual mother. It's tough. I think a lot of times when people lash out at somebody, it's most times either because of a jealousy or an insecurity that they have within themselves. But I don't see the connection with her wanting him to go into the office or even caring. But I feel it's just because I had to do it this way, you have to do it a different way, which I see as an easier way or a lazier way, which may not.
Yeah.
You may be more productive working from home. What was his issue or what was his question? Was he asking, was she the asshole or?
Oh, it's not really that. It's basically there's a category called like narcissism in Reddit. It's just one of those things of control. They want everything on them. They want all the attention on them, and they believe they're the center of the universe. And so they don't want you to, it is like what you said, a little bit of this jealousy of like, why do you get to not have to go into the office? Exactly what you said. There was no like work from home. If, I worked at a pharmacy, I had to like stock the shelves.
And the high vibes that try to turn it around, right? And like look from her point of view. Like why is it bothering her so much? Maybe that's something that he could try and, again, communication with your partner, with your parents, with your family, with your friends. I'm a big fan of communication. So I think he if he could open up those lines and maybe try and find out, or maybe ask like, why aren't you happy for me that I have an easier life? Parents want to provide an easier and better life for their children. They want them to have more security. They want them to have more money, have a better job than I did when I came up. It is odd that she's looking at it through that lens, but I think if he could, ask her, like, well, why can't you be happy for me for this? It's interesting, the control, like you said, like the last time she had like control over him was like, as a teenager when he still lived at home. Again, I would say these two need to have a conversation and try and get to the bottom of what the real issue is.
OP needs to just remain calm like he seems to know how to do, stay in the eye of the storm, and don't engage in an argument with her. Because if his mother can pull him into that kind of guilt or defensiveness or over-explaining posture, she'll feel that power rush and she'll just want more of it. That's the kind of key with narcissists. They just want to engage in something that ultimately leads back to them. They want to make it about them. We see this every day, in the news. Somebody wants to turn something that's happening outside back to them. And that's the unhealthy pattern that she has. I mean, I think he probably moved away because he knew that that's the way she is, and he didn't want to bring too many people around her because that's just the default setting. I grew up with a friend whose mom wasn't narcissist, but just had certain issues where, I don't know, more like neurotic. And so if you're around her, it's anything you're doing, she's going to question over and over again, like, where are you guys going? Oh, we're just going to go outside. What? It's like 40 degrees. People get sick out there. And it's like, it's not that cold. No, it's freezing. Take this, take that. When are you going to be back? It's like very, and he kind of, I could tell he felt a little uncomfortable when she was there because he knew that she would intervene and interject and it would be a hassle just to get out of the house. But, becoming an adult isn't just about financial dependence. It's energetic independence, the ability to choose your environment, your inner state, your own standards. And as long as he continues to limit his mother's access to him with like fewer calls, scheduled contacts, that I think will be okay. He just needs to protect himself and his home and his workspace. We just have to try and think again, do I want to be in this? Is this messing with me? Is it like messing with my chi? Am I walking out of these situations feeling stressed and like I can't do anything right? And unfortunately for him, it happens to be his mom. But at a certain point, no matter who it is in our life, we have to make that choice to figure out what's best for us and our new family and relationships.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's the thing. We can work on ourselves. We can try and fix ourselves. It's harder to try and fix other people. I mean, they have to want to take those steps and work on themselves as well. So, I mean, it sounds like he might have to set rules of what we will talk about and what we won't, and where we teach others how to treat us, right? So
Very good point.
it's her problem, not his problem, it sounds like. What sucks is that a lot of times people will turn to non-communication then. They'll turn to, oh, I won't call you anymore. Well, I won't contact you anymore. And then that just makes a rift grow bigger instead of, closing it.
I think limiting his like interactions and making it clear, like, look, this is my job. This is my space. I really don't want to talk about that stuff with you because for whatever reason, you don't seem to be happy for me when I feel like you should be as my mom. But let's just limit our communication on that front. Every now and then there's somebody who just, it's like a splinter in their mind, a dog with a bone. There's just something that gets in them and they just can't stop talking about it. Like, why is this guy a fan of this team? Like, he's not even from that city. I just don't understand. He lives here, whatever it is. Like people just get into these like, obsessive thoughts, but it's usually a sign of something much deeper that has nothing to do with the actual issue.
Yeah, and there also sounds like there's, just an issue of respect, an issue of respecting his choices and his life.
I brought this up to you because I know you have the privilege of working from home most of the time. And so I wanted to share this quick story. I have a friend whose brother works from home, but I imagine it's nothing like what you get to do every day. I understand that if you're not in the office, they want to measure your production because they don't know what you're doing. Some of them measure it by, did you make the sale? If we gave you a list of 50 people to call, did you call those 50 people? Is that provable? I understand that. But this guy, he literally is chained to the computer with like a digital leash. Like every 5 minutes, if he like is done with a call, let's say he made like 10 calls and he takes a moment, take a sip of water, within like a minute or two, it's like, hey, you haven't picked up the phone. It like prompts him on his program. It's like, hey, you need to continue to do this. You're on track for this. You got to make this call now. Make this call now. I just can't even imagine that kind of a, digital slavery.
Yeah, no, that does not sound great either. And is that kind of pressure making you more productive?
He actually says that it does increase his productivity, but only because he's got this, gun to his head. It's just like, keep like a whip. He's being whipped every 5 seconds. Like, keep making calls, keep logging your progress, go, go, go. So for him, he actually is doing well at the job, but it's not fun. And again,
he might be more productive, but how's his well-being?
Exactly.
How does he feel at the end of it? Even though he's at home, how does he feel when he gets to close the laptop at the end of the day? Is he just drained? Is he angry? And it's tough. I get it, because sometimes you have to take a job. You got to put bread on the table. You gotta feed your family. I'm glad I'm glad I have the luxury and that I don't have a job like that. That's gonna keep me chained, where I have to hit the feeder or I have to hit the button every 5 minutes just to let somebody know I'm there. Because even going into work, I've had jobs where you have to go in the office, and it's the same thing. Maybe you have like 30 minutes of work, but now I'm just sitting at my desk, like surfing the web. I don't know. I think the mentality of work and like, the 9 to 5 work, it's just like work, 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 squeeze every minute out. I mean, again, how is your well-being? If it's destroying you, then like, I don't know, it's not worth it. So hopefully people that find themselves in those situations can find the courage, because I know it's so scary to like step out or to change a routine or quit a job. Sometimes you have to. It's like that the first person that said, I'm going to survive either way. And I think a lot of times you make that decision, you will survive. You'll find a way to survive and get it, and hopefully find a better way of life that's not just draining you spiritually and intellectually and just physically and everything.
Humans are very resilient and we bounce back. So what you just said is interesting, yeah, because I think that what you have the benefit of is trust. They trust you, and they're not like your employers are not constantly hovering over your shoulder because they know that you're getting stuff done. This is like a different thing, I think. This is like they want to just, of course, get the most amount of calls or
That sounds like a
sales.
telemarketing or some kind of something where it's based on volume and based on how many people you can reach or how many calls you can get through in a day.
I think it is. Yeah. And so, yeah,
Ooh.
that's not, but I love what you said about well-being, because that's the question we all have to do in our lives. We have to balance, what is my time worth at the expense of my own spiritual sanity in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I, 32 male, just ended a 10-year relationship with my girlfriend, 32 female. After a decade together, I'm not even sure what love is anymore. I, 32 male, and my ex, 32 female, just broke up. She was my first love. We started as online friends back in our teens, became close friends during university, and eventually made it official. We moved in together after a year of dating. We spent 10 years by each other's side through thick and thin. She's a very private, introverted person. No close friends, mostly a homebody, and not very close to her parents. I'm a bit different. I enjoy my time at home, but I also love going out and talking to people. I'm the type who likes socializing and catching up with my parents. I was always down to hang out with her friends too, but she'd only join me a couple times before giving up on it entirely. Early on, she used to tell me I spent too much time out with friends, and it made her feel lonely. Because I cared about her, I took that to heart and slowly pulled back. Eventually, my whole world revolved solely around her. I'd only see my friends maybe once a month. In recent years, we both got buried in our careers. Life became a blur of work and chores. Since I work from home, another guy, I always wanted a clean, organized space, but the house was usually cluttered with her stuff. When I spoke up, she did make an effort to change. We'd cook together, or she'd clean up a bit, but it was hit or miss. She still prioritized entertainment over everything else. To be fair, her job was incredibly stressful and soul-crushing. Her company was going through waves of layoffs, and the atmosphere was just depressing. I think she used gaming as an escape, but as a result, she'd work and play games until 2 a.m., which often messed with my sleep. We rarely had deep talks anymore. Even on anniversaries, we'd just go to a cafe or the supermarket, and I'd feel this overwhelming sense of emptiness. We'd both just end up pulling out our laptops to work, or our phones, or just to play games. Whenever I tried to bring up future plans, she'd either disagree or just go silent. By the end, our conversations were mostly just venting about work. We went to the same old restaurants, went on trips, but stayed glued to our screens. I don't even know what happened to us. I still miss her, but I'm honestly questioning if what we had at the end was even love at all. Has anyone else felt this emptiness after a long-term relationship? Is it love I'm missing or just the routine?
I think sometimes just people grow apart. I mean, especially in your 20s and into your 30s, when you're trying to figure out what you want and what you want to do and what you want to be and what you want your life to be. I think those things can overlap in the beginning, and it sounds like here slowly their priorities and what they each wanted out of their lives was different. I mean, that's okay. And then that's why you don't have to be chained to somebody your whole life or the first person you fall in love with. You date to figure out what you want and what you want to get out of a relationship. And if you're not getting what you need and what you want out of the relationship, I don't think it's wrong to get out of the relationship. So, in relationships, there's a lid for every pot, right? I think he'll be able to find somebody that matches his speed, and she will be able to do the same, hopefully. Find a homebody or find somebody that likes gaming or that is into more of the things that she's into, and he can find stuff that more of the stuff he's into. Doesn't mean that the love they had and shared was meaningless or wasn't there. It might have ran out. It might have not been there at the end, but it doesn't negate any of the things or the prior years that they spent together or the love that they shared at that time.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, to me, this is about chemistry and compatibility, straight up. Sometimes people grow apart. It's like what you said, it happens. Sometimes the differences between them, the opposing frequencies that started out as like a perfect balance, can just drift out of alignment. And then they're no longer creating that beautiful synergy together. Many people want to believe that it's only temporary, that it's just one person needs some extra space or alone time or whatever. And once they get it, everything will be simpatico. But that whole way of thinking is kind of denial, because once we remove the blinders and allow ourselves to see with clarity what is actually broken, what's out of sync, what's, in their case, maybe boring and devoid of passion, then the only thing to do is to make a choice. Stay or hit the road. And that's the bottom line. But like you said, relationships change, feelings change, situations change, just part of life. And I really believe that's the test to a large degree that we're all faced with. It's a constant sense of, where do I feel safe and where am I allowed to grow? And if you're in a situation, whether, like we said before, at work or in a relationship, and it doesn't seem to be that really good synergy and chemistry, it's just time to ask the questions, look inward and think, is this still going to be something that is good for both of us?
That's some of the scariest thing, because that's the unknown and we fear the unknown. And you were saying, was it routine? The routine works, the routine's there. If the routine's not there, then what do I have? And that's scary. And I think that's a scary proposition for people who want to leave a job or to leave a relationship. Am I going to something worse than what I had, and even if that wasn't great. So yeah, I think that's the scary part right there, is just taking that leap.
Totally. The unknown is the scariest part for every one of us on every front. And that's the challenge. Can we find that courage within us to make that next move, especially when it's pretty obvious? Because I do think people have seen something that they know they have to make that move and they just can't, and that's the challenge. So let me read you a comment. Someone wrote, yeah, this hits. You can care deeply about someone and still be stuck in something that's slowly stopped working. And that mix is what makes it feel so confusing after it ends. Another person said, I ended an 11-year relationship for similar reasons. We stopped trying, putting effort in each other, compromising out of care, trying new things, exploring together. Even for our 10-year anniversary, we just sat home and watched a movie like any other day. I dreamt of at least a weekend away somewhere. I wanted traveling city life. He wanted routine and calm forest walks. We started very similar, but then became very different people. And again, it's not like either is wrong. It's like, I've been there in my past relationships. We started on a similar track, and then, either needs or goals change, and then we just slowly drift apart. For me, once I see that we're standing on opposite ends of a canyon, that's when I go, okay, wait, I need to look at this honestly, and then we need to have that talk. And every time I've done that in the past, obviously, it was a mutual decision at that point to move on, Someone else said, you're not compatible. It's as simple as that. You guys want different things out of life and a relationship. There's no point wasting your precious time on this planet trying to make it work. Never forget the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you put years into something doesn't mean it's not worth moving on from it. That's a good point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something, it's very easy to be on the outside and say, oh, it's a very simple move. It's a very simple answer. But we know relationships are very complex. Feelings are very complex.
This guy says, lately I've been thinking a lot about creativity. In a world where AI is doing more and more, I feel like one of the few truly unique things we humans still have is our creativity. But here's my question. Is creativity something that comes from our genetics and personality? Or is it something we can actually improve with practice? So, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I would like to think it's something that you can improve with practice. Whether that's actually the case or not, I mean, I don't know if that's known. Can you work on that? Can you bolster that? I think you can. I think if you want to be creative, in which way? It's like if you're a painter or if you're a writer. I write, so it's like, where does that creativity come from, or can that creativity be bolstered? I mean, yeah, I think if you keep working or practicing on something, for me, being creative is trying to come up with different ideas for scripts or movie ideas. And sometimes you have to bang your head against the wall a long time before a creative spark will hit. Where do we grab these ideas? They're out in the air. Are we just grabbing them, or are they within us? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think on this one?
Well, interesting because the way I see this, first of all, the second part of their post says, I really want to become more creative. Not in a big abstract way, but in small, realistic steps. So if anyone has tips, habits, or exercises that helped you become more creative, I'd love to hear them. Something doable and easy would be great. So now this becomes like people in the comments are giving advice on that, and then something interesting is thrown out there. So one of the comments says you can train your creativity muscle by writing ideas down. Every day, try thinking of an X amount of things that haven't been invented or X amount of story ideas.
I think that's right on. Exactly. It's a muscle. It's like one of those muscles that is not a physical muscle, but it's something that if you work on and continue to work on and keep working on daily, creativity is such a wide umbrella. Like just general creativity in drawing and painting and idea generating. Are you trying to create an app? Like if it's a specific thing, then yes, I think you can drill down and you can develop a discipline and work that muscle and keep that muscle going. Yeah, I agree with that poster or responder who said that, you got to work that muscle and keep working.
Yeah.
It is the creative, it's if you're trying to, if you want to be a painter, then then you paint every day, become disciplined about it. And can you get better, or would you become more creative? I think you can.
Side note, I do have a couple of friends, even actually my dad I could throw in there, who kind of say that they're not creative. But then when I see some of the things that they can do, I'm like, you're not giving yourself any credit here. These are like creative ideas. It might not be like a painting or anything, but it's an approach that is a creative approach. It takes a certain mindset, I think.
So when you say creative, I'm like thinking of like more of like the arts and stuff. But yes, creativity can come in many different shapes and sizes. It can be how you approach a problem or how you solve the problem.
Yeah, so here's another comment. Some people are naturally creative, but most of us have to work at it, and that's okay. Creativity grows when you show up for it, even in small ways. Now, another commenter, which is the one I wanted to bring up, says, I find there's an important distinction between being creative and learning your craft. You can train to do anything, be it songwriting, painting, dressmaking, whatever it is. And there's a certain level of mastery that is required within that craft before you're actually able to be creative or do something new. So I find focusing my discipline on my craft the more important avenue towards being creative. Can't break the rules if you don't know them. That said, it seems possible to be both a master of a craft and still not be a creative person. I doubt it's a genetic thing either, because then the descendants of genius would also produce their own, and that's rarely the case.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was interesting because they're basically saying they're looking at it as either you just have creativity or you find a craft that you get really good at, and then as you expand within that craft, like let's say glass blowing, I'm a big fan of that. If you watch somebody who's learning, there's a lot more technical things they need to know first. How much air to inflate into the glass, how to shape it, what tools they're going to use. And then they get to a point where once they kind of know that, now they can go, well, let's try these other pieces here that are going to be a little more precarious, because if you don't do this exactly right at this exact time, it'll just crack. And then they can start thinking, there are people who come out of it right out of the gate with a creative approach for sure, but the argument here is that the craft, knowing the basics and knowing how to do something, opens the gateway to creativity versus being a creative person who then brings that creativity into something. It's a question that I don't know the answer to. It's kind of a fascinating thought.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. And maybe it's something where maybe creativity can help this person or help others when you reach out to others or you try to be creative with others instead of trying to just totally make it like, oh, am I creative or not? And if I work at this, maybe I can become creative. And it's like maybe creativity can come through others in influence and just with other people.
There's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I've never read it, but a friend of mine read it, and he said it really helped him get out of like a writer's block situation. One of the things is they do something called morning pages, which is like where they write down 3 pages of stream of conscious thoughts every morning because it helps them get into the flow without constantly judging themselves. Now, I think that's very helpful, even though I've never done it, because I always tell people that when you're trying to be creative, and as a screenwriter, that when you're trying to come up with an idea, let's say you say, okay, it's about a guy who goes into the woods and sees a creature. It's like you can immediately start second guessing yourself and say, oh, every movie's about that. There's always a creature. There's always a guy. There's always woods. And it's like, sure. But the real concept in the beginning is to give yourself permission to just like flow with it and not be blocked up by the logic mind, which is constantly trying to like keep you second guessing. It's some part of our ego that's just like, the naysayer. Oh, that's stupid. That's dumb. He goes and he finds what? Everyone's done that. So that's what I think is so interesting is that for me, and I think for you too, I mean, I know you do a lot of research, but you also allow yourself the freedom to just like come up with a concept. And I would imagine you write some things down before you say absolutely not and walk away. Yeah, it's the process, So for me, I would tell a friend who, when it comes to like, let's say music writing, he was the one who would say, every time I play a G chord and then I play an A chord, I'm like, oh, that's everybody does that. It's already the same. I'm like, listen, there's only so many chords. What you need to do is just flow with it, see where it goes and suspend judgment until it takes shape.
I think it's important to realize also that this poster or anybody, they're coming at whatever they're working on with their particular point of view.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot in screenwriting too. They call it your voice. What is your voice? That's your point of view. That's how you grew up, the opinions you hold, just different life that you've been exposed to. That it all informs your point of view. The way I would experience that or the way I would picture that could be very different than somebody else's way that they are doing that. And I think that's where the different creativities can shine through. You're going to see it the way you see it. No one else is going to see it that way. I mean, not no one. Somebody might put a G to A chord or something the same way. But maybe, maybe you're more sloppy with it and more like an indie rocker, or maybe you're more precision, more classical. Maybe, maybe, you add a little vibrato to it or something. It's just like whatever you're bringing to it, that's all of everything that you've accumulated in your life.
That's an interesting point because I will say that I met a guitar player who had played with somebody, I don't remember who, some like somewhat known band. And after that experience, he kind of went through a whole rediscovery of like a new way to play. And when I first met him, like he kind of played for me and I said, hey, you want to play a couple songs on stage? And he started to sort of try and learn our song, the band I had back when, and play. And I was sort of surprised. I was like, wait a minute, why are you playing like this sort of laid back behind the beat style, like almost bluesier? And he said, oh, I know I used to be very staccato, like rock rhythms on the beat. He said, I worked really long and hard to go the other way, to kind of play it this way. And I'm just like, wow, that's so interesting because that's not what we wanted for our song, but it opened up the door to like another way to look at it. And, even if it didn't work for us, it's just an interesting concept how you're right. You could take the same two different writers with the same subject, 2 different guitar players with the same song, and they're not going to play the same thing. I love this category. It's called Glitch in the Matrix. And there's stories, you can imagine they're all kind of similar, but this one is my towel rack changed overnight. So I, 29 female, woke up this morning to my towel rack looking completely different. I walked into the bathroom ready to take a shower. My towel rack immediately caught my attention because there were 3 towels on it. 2 towels were on the back bar and 1 towel was on the front bar. The issue? Our towel rack has always just been 1 bar. We usually only have 2 towels on the rack, but there have been occasions where I've needed to hang up 3. There's not enough room to hang all 3 comfortably on 1 bar, so I've always just smushed them together on the single bar. There's never been a 2-bar towel rack to easily allow for 3 towels to fit. This was extremely jarring to me because I also had trouble hanging up my towel after my shower was done. I'm not used to tucking the towel behind 2 bars, so it felt totally different and wrong. I even called my husband at work to ask what was going on. I asked if he changed it out or was pulling a prank on me, but he was adamant that it's always been that way. I asked how we normally hang our towels, and he told me we normally hang them over both bars. I tried that, and it still felt and looked off. At this point, I'm on the verge of a panic attack. How could our towel rack change overnight?
Glitchy. Yeah, and you know what's funny with these glitches a lot of times, and even in the Matrix, right? The black cat. It's something so mundane. It's a towel rack, right? It's just like something, it's not like, oh, the color of my car or the type of car I have or even who my husband is, you know, it's not a glitch like that. It's a glitch where it's just this little tiny thing. And now you know, Mandela effect or glitches, that's that's the wild. That's wild.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up is the Mandela effect because, someone wrote this comment which triggered that whole thought again. They said, after living in my house for many years, I noticed a blue line painted on the concrete floor of the basement. At first, I was mildly freaked out, but after giving the matter some thought and inspecting the line, I realized that it had always been there, but I just didn't notice it. Not that I'm downplaying your experience, but the mind is capable of playing strange tricks on us. And I'm not dismissive of the possibility of Mandela effects. The Fruit of the Loom cornucopia always had fruit, damn it. That's their thought. And I was thinking about that. I was like, listen, I grew up where Bernstein Bears, what is this? Berenstain Bears? The Monopoly guy, I don't see why he doesn't have a monocle. And Curious George doesn't have a tail. That is so weird, isn't it? He doesn't have a tail?
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because I do feel if you go through, you know, the list of Mandelas that are out there, you will find people who will at least spark to 1 or 2 of them or a couple of them. It's never like someone's like, no, I remember no cornucopia. I remember no mono. Like there's always one in there that'll get somebody, a Berenstain Bears or something like that. And yeah, it's very interesting. And, you know, you start spiraling out into quantum physics and double slit experiments and the nature of the observer and parallel universes. And you make this decision on this and, you know, and does that collapse the wavelength or wave file that's like going off on the split life decision? It's very fun to think about and it's very scary when it happens to you. Yeah. The towel thing is funny because my wife recently said something in our guest bathroom. She thought this I changed the soap out. And she goes, "Did we always have that soap in there?" And it was like kind of the same thing when you were talking about the towel rack. I was like immediately thought about that. And I was like, "No, that's always been the same." But then I started questioning myself. I was like, because I do remember a time when we had a different dispenser in there, and she goes, "It's Apple," and I was like, "We have Apple soap?" And then I felt the same way. It's like, is it a trick, or did we always have it, or am I misremembering it? And the brain, you know, and then you go, oh, the mind is, you know, very malleable and very not reliable, your memory. So they're very fascinating. I do love them. I mean, I was a Berenstain guy myself.
Yeah.
It's funny to see some, you know, either AI generated or people like coming up with mock covers and saying, "Look, I had it. It said Berenstain and not Stain." And it's like, I don't know. In this day and age, it's just hard to trust that somebody didn't manipulate that or if that's real, unless you had it yourself. I mean, again, a lot of these subjective experiences are, you know, exactly that. It's like, how are you experiencing them? How are you remembering them?
One explanation is collective false memory. Neuroscience shows that memory isn't stored like a video file. It's reconstructed every time you recall it, influenced by language, suggestion, repetition, and expectation. When many people misremember the same thing, it could mean that the original information was ambiguous, so a more logical version replaced it. Repetition then reinforced the error. And a good example of that is like the logos or the way they spell things wrong. Looney Tunes, for example. Like, why would it be tunes? Tunes. Is there music related to this? It should be like tunes, like cartoons.
Right.
And that sort of
exactly.
defies logic. It
Wait,
just
which
doesn't
one
make-
is it? Is it TUNES?
Yeah.
Looney, actual loony music and not loony cartoons.
Yeah, I think it's like loony is spelled Loon, EY or something, but
Yeah.
tunes is not TOONS. And it sort of feels like it should be loony cartoons.
Right.
But it's Looney Tunes. Interestingly, I used to hear things wrong. For example, we'll play it by ear. And that's a musical phrase, but I heard it wrong as we'll play it by year. So I thought, every year something changes. I don't even know what I thought it meant, but that's an example of stuff like that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think, I won't say everybody because that's such an absolute, but it seems that most people will have certain things like that. Everyone
Yeah.
a little misremember or a little phrase that's said differently. Or one of the most things is like misheard lyrics, right? The big ones, excuse me while I kiss this guy. And instead of sky. And I think it's just, it's our brains, it's our ears, it's, maybe even our upbringings and what we bring to, our experience.
Now, are we sure that it isn't, excuse me while I kiss this guy?
Exactly. I mean, just like Looney Tunes, I would guess that you could go back to whoever invented it. I don't think they would probably be alive today, but at one point you could probably go back or maybe you can go back and research maybe cartoons back in when Looney Tunes first started. Maybe it was, because they did put a lot of music over it and stuff like that.
guess.
So maybe it was tunes, but to us, it seems like cartoons has always been car and TONS and tunes. So that one's nice. But a lot of them is just how we remember them or that weird shift. Or maybe there is a glitch. Maybe it is a simulation, or maybe there are different forks in time and different schisms. Maybe 2012 was a time for the Mayan calendar and a reset. And I like when people try to go back and pinpoint where we forked or when things might have changed. But of course, how could you ever know that if you're living within the changed timeline? So
The only thing about that is perhaps the way we could know is a similar way that the characters know in the Matrix. There's one little thing, there's something else, and if you do want to look at it, you'll start seeing some of those moments of change of the simulation happening behind. But you're right, we can never know for sure.
Well, and it's also nice to have somebody come in and give you a pill and then pull you out of it and actually show you because they actually know.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we all need a Morpheus, right?
Yeah, I'll need a Morpheus to show us the way.
Last thing I'll say about this is they say pattern completion by the brain is kind of an explanation too. The brain is a prediction machine. It fills in gaps to create coherence. If something should be a certain way based on grammar, branding, logic, like we were talking about, or narrative structure, the brain corrects it subconsciously, even if the correction is wrong. For example, Luke, I am your father versus no, I am your father.
Now, don't quote me on this, but I thought there's this thing with like your vision where in everybody's vision, there is a blind spot of where your optic nerve connects to your eye. But your brain, we don't see a gap in our vision. Our brain fills in the information in the gap, so it makes it seem like we don't have one. So it's very interesting. Vision, hearing, our brain, memory, how they all connect, and how you just said your brain can kind of fill it in, or you can kind of fill in the gaps or fill in the information.
Can you see that right now?
Mm-hmm.
So
You're gonna Rorschach test me?
We've tried these basic ones. We have some more weird ones. I'm curious to see what you think. I'll participate. We'll both throw things out there. I think it's interesting. What do you see in this image?
A man riding a horse. No, I'm kidding. it looks like a butterfly.
Yeah, right. It's how does it not look like a butterfly is really the question.
Right. I
Right?
mean, yeah. Well, my brain and my eyes are seeing yes. I see the antenna, the head, the wings.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of them sort of have that vibe. So here, let me throw another one at you here.
But these are fun. I've never actually done one of these.
There might be slightly different elements to it, but it's similar, right?
It is similar. I mean, I mean, to me, crab comes up right away.
Interesting. Yeah. In the middle there's sort of like something in that middle section.
It's almost like a scorpion to me with like little claws coming back, but you don't actually see kind of a tail coming back. Just that white part on the thorax.
Yeah.
of the
Oh,
chest
yeah.
and this thing.
I find it interesting because if you just focus on the middle only and you just like for a moment discard the wings,
Mhm.
it really has this a creature kind of a vibe. Like it really, I mean, I could say that about the last one, but I see a little Mothman vibe in there somewhere, somewhere in
Yeah,
the
it's
face
almost
or
like
something.
well, like the Silence of the Lambs, right? Like the whatever that moth, the deadhead moth or the death head moth, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, man. What an amazing but scary film, right? Here's a third one, the last one. What is this?
What is that? Yeah, I mean, at first, it has, to me again, it has the head and kind of antenna on top, but it's kind of mirrored on the bottom too. And now I didn't give you like my immediate like thing. Now I'm like taking it in and analyzing it. But to me, vampiric kind of feel to it because of the red and just the black of this imposing figure standing there.
I'll tell you what I see that I think is interesting is if you look at the two lower images, like it almost looks like that's a little unicorn horn on the left one, but probably on the right one too, of that's just sticking there. I don't know if you see where I'm pointing. And then the two above look like horse bottoms with like a head, a human head with big poofy hair or something.
You're seeing the unicorns on the bottom,
Yeah, I
two
see
like, and then it's almost like horses like standing on their back feet.
yes,
Yeah, it's all
standing up on
funny
a
if you concentrate on the black or the red, how it can kind of
ha.
change.
Yeah, because for some reason the black part, because it's got such broad shoulders, I don't know why. I just think of it moving really slow and wobbly, almost like those creatures in the Fifth Element. You remember those like sort of robot things that were in
Hmm.
the very first scene? They just like barely like kind of move like that. That's just the shape it looks on the top, but you're right. It does get mirrored on the bottom. These things are so interesting because they're just like, what do they actually prove? Like, what would a doctor or a psychiatrist write down about this, right? I will tell you one story I thought was interesting, which is back during the Nuremberg trials, Goering, who is the number two in command in the Nazi hierarchy, he was shown a few pictures of Rorschach images, and they were all black, except for one, which had a little like speck of red, like just a little bit of red, maybe only on one side. And they handed each one to him. And when he got to that one, he was sort of wiping off the red. He was just trying to wipe off the red. And the psychiatrist later told him, I think that deep down you feel very guilty for what you did. That's like the blood you're trying to clean off of that. You know the bloodshed you caused. It's also, you can argue that everything was black and then there's one that had red and you just sort of thought maybe it just had a little something extra that wasn't supposed to be there. But that's how he interpreted it. It's
an
deep,
interesting
deep
look
guilt.
into individuals' minds and perception, definitely.
On to the hot topic of the day, which is something that you and I have talked about in the past. And it is basically, are cryptids real? And if so, what is the best proof? So I think we should start with the Patterson-Gimlin film, which was shot in 1967 in Northern California, and it seems to capture a real Sasquatch walking along a river. I do have some points, but what are your thoughts immediately when you think about that film as much as we've seen of it?
God, I have such a weird and difficult relationship with all this because I love it so much, and yet I do have a hard time believing in a lot of it. And I do turn to my rational mind for a lot of things. So while I believe that there are a lot of instances and a lot of cases that are unexplainable, I'm a Fox Mulder. I want to believe, but I've been to Point Pleasant, Mothman. I've been to Flatwoods for Flatwoods Monsters. Beast of Bray Road is in my backyard where I grew up. Patterson-Gimlin is probably some of the best proof of Bigfoot or a cryptid encounter. Just like UFOs, trace evidence, but it's mostly anecdotal a lot of the time. So you're just hearing the story from someone. Just the amount of stories that, or anecdotal evidence that you hear on a particular subject makes me lean towards that there's something to it. Whether it is exactly what the individual saw or thought they saw might be different than what it actually is, but I think there is something to these cases, whether there's a flesh and blood hominid ape-like creature that's been undetectable or unfound bones, all that stuff. It's hard for me to officially get on board with a lot of it. Yeah.
I'm going to read you the 3 points that they say kind of is good proof of that film being authentic, which opens the door to then other questions. Many researchers, including special effects experts like Bill Munns, point to the fluidity and biomechanics of the creature's walk, particularly the flexing foot and leg muscles, as impossible to replicate with 1960s costume technology. Anthropologist Jeff Meldrum says that the footprints left at the site and the creature's style of walking show a flexible midfoot, a characteristic known as a mid-tarsal break, which allows apes to have a specific type of ground contact that is different from a normal human gait. That has been sort of the argument from a lot of anthropologists who are on this side of the fence. And unfortunately, Jeff Meldrum just recently passed away. I don't know if you know that.
Oh.
Like within a month or so. But I always like listening to him whenever he was chiming in on these conversations, because he was looking, he has, I think, at least well over 100, if not 1,000 different casts that he's either been sent or that he went and took. And he was convinced pretty early on from the Patterson film, because he would see certain things in those casts that indicate a real creature's foot. And so
dermal
to him,
ridges or features of a real foot.
So the second thing is the technological limitations of 1967. Proponents argue that creating a suit with such realistic movement, especially the way the torso twists and shoulders move in frame 352, would have been incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for two relatively unknown men with limited resources to pull off a hoax. So the last one is credible witness testimony and footprints. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin maintained the footage was real. It says until their deaths. Obviously, Bob Gimlin is still alive. I think he's like 95. And the massive detailed footprints left behind, indicating a 500-plus pound creature, seemed too complex for a casual hoax. So, I mean, I actually have done my fair share of watching some of these documentaries on Bigfoot. Specifically, we'll stay there for a minute. And I will just say that based on the testimonies by some people, there's this movie called A Flash of Beauty that I just watched. And a lot of these witnesses are sharing their story for the first time on camera. And, you know, when someone does that, they either get, like what we talked about earlier, red light fever, where they just clam up, or maybe they feel like now that the camera's in their face, they're going to give a little more they're going to either embellish, or now it's like an awareness. But I really noticed that everybody in this documentary seemed to be authentic and coming from a place of either they were completely moved by their experience or it really shook them. These two guys went out and just saw, this is in Washington State. They went to this like lake and they're thinking, oh, we're going to film some footage here. And on the other side, they saw these 3 Bigfoots in the water, like on the edge of on the way other side of the lake. One looks over and goes, hey, what is that? And the other goes like, I don't know, it's probably a bear. You know, you want to dismiss it. It's like, oh, it's probably a bear. It's like, is it really a bear? And then they just kind of locked eyes with one of them, the biggest one, and like, is that what I think it is? Could that be? And then one of the Bigfoot was smaller. And so the largest one kind of gently tugged the smaller one out of the water. I don't know if it was swimming or what. And he kind of just very quietly pulled that one and the other one behind him, and they kind of went into the trees, and they were watching the whole thing. And they recognized that it was something that it's almost like you shouldn't see it. It's like in the Truman Show, for example, when he wandered into one of the office buildings and he could see everybody with the headsets and the craft service and, wardrobe department. He's like, what the heck is this? This is like not my reality. And like, you can't be in here, sir. It's sort of like you just see something behind the simulation or something. And they felt really shaken. But now they said they just like pray they could see something again, and they know they never will. But they're like, oh my God, they were right there. They were right there. We were locking eyes with them. But it's interesting how it took a while for them to realize, to accept what they were seeing.
There's a thing called the Oz effect, I think. This woman, Jenny Randall, I think, coined it, where it is like when you experience something, a UFO, a creature, a cryptid, it is so bizarre and strange to you that it kind of does throw you out of whack a little bit. And it does take a while for your senses to kind of come back. And then, of course, we just try to reconstruct it in terms that we know. So if something's so strange and unusual, like Truman, like walking behind, like seeing behind the curtain, it can have that effect where it kind of just throws you in a loop. But then after, and you're trying to reconstruct your memories, you might start, yes, rationalizing, oh, it must have been a bear, it must have been this, it couldn't have been this, because that's not real, right? A lot of cases, people will see a UFO or see something land or something, and then just go back inside and go to bed. And just like, because like, what can you really do with that information of seeing something? It's like, saw something weird and then it took off and left. And then like, you can't just like break down and not do anything the rest of your life. You got to keep living your life and keep going. So it's just like, maybe brush it away or rationalize it in some way, or you can tell people about it, or you can hold it, or you can research and like kind of get deep into it.
A lot of these people in this documentary said that they held on to this for years. Like maybe they told a friend or something. I don't know how the investigator, the doc maker, found them, but they were not people who were going around to every bar sharing these stories.
Right.
They had heard from a friend of a friend of a friend, hey, you got to talk to this guy. I think he has something.
Like I like to like watch their testimony, the witness like account of it, and it really is a gut feeling on if you believe somebody or not, or how credible they seem.
It's hard to fake excitement, even for the best actors. If you see something, or fake like a sincere level of fear where you're like, oh my God, I saw this thing and it was so huge. I cannot believe it was that big, like 800 pounds, like super, like 5 times as wide as a human, whatever it is, and then just be like, you ask them again, they're like, oh yeah, no big deal. Like if you bring it up to someone who really had that experience, any kind of traumatic experience in their mind, they're going to feel it on some level, and it's going to be obvious, I think. This guy was this older man who was a rancher, and he like had this experience with his son-in-law where they were in Utah. They were floating. Was it Utah or Idaho? One of those. They were floating on a river, like kind of in the middle of nowhere after going on this camping trip. And just him and the son-in-law went out down the river, and he just looked over and he saw this Bigfoot. Like first it was crouching, and then it stood up, and he was like, whoa. And he was just like in shock at first. And then they were exchanging, him and his son-in-law were exchanging binoculars. So they kept looking at it, and they got a really, really good long look. And so this guy said he used to sing to his cows. So once the thing sort of started kind of walking off, he started to sing, a song, and it didn't react. So then he kept singing it louder, and all of a sudden it stood up like it was curious. And I looked at him, and he was just like in such awe. He really took this in, and he was so moved by it. He says, thank you for showing me this most amazing, beautiful creature. And then like a year later, he came back to that area, and while he was in the airport, he couldn't keep it in. He just said really loudly, hey, I saw a Bigfoot. Does anyone else have a story like that? Please come tell me. And he said he's talked to 5 people. And since then, he's collected hundreds of stories. It's just when someone has that experience, it seems authentic to me. And he had a witness, and they both saw it up close and he described it to a T. You'd have to see in the doc how he described it. But it's like, the real question always comes back to, if they exist, how have they been able to stay hidden for so long? The answer could be that they understand how dangerous humans can be. So they say, they made a rule. I always joke that they probably look at Patty and go, Patty, why did you have to be seen and captured on film? Rule 1, never be fully seen on film from now on. You see people, you go the other way. You make it so that's blurry at best. And that's the only big thing is why have we not seen a carcass? Why have we not gotten the greatest footage ever? And in the world of AI, would we even believe it right now, right?
That's what's tough these days. Yes, is AI and just how can we believe any video or picture? But the thing I like what you're saying about some of these people, and to me, what does add a little bit more credibility to it is, are they trying to get rich off of it? If they're trying to gain anything from it, that's kind of, you get into a little bit of sketchy territory. But for a lot of these cases, they don't, like you said, they don't tell anyone. Maybe they told a friend. Maybe they, they talk about it on their deathbed or something like that. Not looking for fame, not looking for fortune. And there are a lot of cases where people just, they experience something and they don't want to revisit it. They don't want to like make money off of it or anything. And I feel like that's a little, at least a little bit closer to that they had the experience. I mean, and I don't want to say it's like, oh, they believe the experience that they had, but they had something. And again, subjectivity.
There is a guy who's a photo archivist or whatever that phrase is, and he's been working on restoring one of the closest to the original Patterson-Gimlin films. And he's doing it just by clearing it off frame by frame or something. And he's already released like 3 pictures. And I don't know if you've seen it. There's one where you see the face.
You sent me stuff previously. It's probably not this, but you sent me some where they've been cleaned up a little bit more. And you sent me the one where they think they saw a second.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, and also, like you were saying, the musculature and the way she walked, because they do think that they see that she has breasts. So they believe it might be a female in this specific thing. But it is funny because it's like, it's almost like anything that's conspiratorial or in these weird spaces where somebody will say, it's like, oh, well, they didn't have this technology or the costumes or the make. But then somebody will say, Planet of the Apes came out in 68. Or in the 60s, late 60s, like that. So it's like, did they have costumes and stuff they could? And then it's like, but then this. So it's like you always get this tug of war back and forth where somebody can discredit it, and then somebody can come up with this piece of evidence, and then it's. So yes, I think it comes down to one of your first questions, which was like the belief. Which one do you more believe might be more real, if you think any of them might be?
From a conscious point of view, what people see in the footage says so much more about them than about the subject itself. Skeptics see a man in a suit. Believers see a biological unknown creature. Anthropologists notice the gait, the muscle movement, the proportions. And what this really proves is that perception is filtered through belief. In that sense, reality isn't observed, it's interpreted through the observer's inner state. And that's pretty much what you just said as well. We don't know for sure. We can't know for sure. I will say that Bob Hieronymus, a man that knew those Patterson and Gimlin, claims to have been the guy in the suit. But at first glance, you might say, hey, the gait looks similar. But I've watched a few videos where they prove that he really couldn't have covered that ground that smoothly in any costume then or today. So he probably was more likely an attention seeker, just wanting to capitalize on all the hoopla. To me, I'm convinced, I'm more on the side of that there is this creature we just don't know about, only because they constantly find things every year that we didn't know about. Now, granted, a lot of them are at the bottom of the ocean, but there was just some sort of small deer-looking creature that they found maybe in Madagascar or something that was there this whole time. In fact, even Jane Goodall, when she went up into the mountains way back when, I don't know if that's South America or South Africa, there was rumors of these gorillas that were up there. When she first went up there, she couldn't see any of them. They were not there because they're so good at hiding. She ended up saying that you could look over here and they'd be right there and you just don't see them. I don't even know how that's possible. She was it's like once she was doing what she felt the best approach was, which is just staying in that area for months and months and getting them acclimated to your presence. Once that was achieved, they started revealing themselves. And I think that's possibly where this whole thing is at right now, is until someone can go out there, and there are people who claim to be doing this, but we'll see. What I do think, we are still a species that requires a certain amount of evidence.
Oh, definitely. The thing for me though, the thing for me with all of this stuff, it's fun. It's fun as all hell, man. I love the stories. I love the lore. It's fun to think about, and it's fun to think that these creatures could exist and that we just haven't discovered them, and that there is a sense of wonder and strangeness out there that, that maybe we're just not so privy to, or that not in our day-to-day lives, but things bleed through or things leak through. That to me, that's the fun stuff. And to me, like you said, every year that we go, maybe a little bit more evidence, or maybe something will happen. So that's what keeps me going with it and stuff too, and keeps me interested in it, is that it is that unknown. And we were talking about that unknown before, and it's scary, but it's also fun, and it's also, interesting to kind of have these thought experiments. And even if you want to go out and, see for yourself or try and find one for yourself, me and my buddies talk about this. It's like, you're out in nature though, and you're with your friends, and you're like, it's just, whether you find anything or not, like the experience. And I think the journey is everything.
When we were in Washington for like 10 plus days, I was trying to look everywhere. I'm driving and I'm like looking up in the woods. And I always say, I bet you if we just check our footage one day, you might see something that's sus, but we don't have the time to go through every little thing. But I do agree with you that the journey is what it's all about. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been super fascinating. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's very fun.
If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know your thoughts on today's stories. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity. Until next time, namaste.
You want the YouTube?
Sure.
Clip?
You've done it. Just give it a little. Right. Like.